A good writer must also be a good reader. So, fellow writers, what are you reading these days, and what impact will it have on your writing? It's Sam with another Friday video for you. I'll answer those questions for you for myself in just a few minutes. Happy Friday. Happy Hobbit Day to those who celebrate. It is, in fact, the fictional birthday of both Bilbo and Frodo Baggins. So, if you're a nerd like me who cares about those kinds of things, I hope you're commemorating it in some way, eating potatoes or having a feast, bunch of dwarves or something. I don't know. Um, yeah. Sadly, though, I'm not here to talk about Tolkien and hobbits today. If you want to hear about that, I have some. Go go through the archives. I have at least a few Tolkien related videos and episodes in my podcast and such that I've been doing for this few years. Today, I'm talking about my latest fiction read, or one of the latest, which I will show you in just a moment. Actually, it's an I read it on ebook, so I have to like move my monitor to show you. But here it is, um, "Survivors of the Mutant Dawn" by Richard P. Stone. I actually had Richard Stone on for an interview like a month or two ago. It was either July or August. I can't remember now. Talked to him about his work and his writing and everything he's doing there. So yeah, read that, so I talked to him about his sci-fi post-apocalyptic work. It sounded interesting to me, and then got the ebook. I have so many author guests on. I can't always read all the books that they have, but I try to read some of them because the ones that sound interesting to me. And I mean, also trying to support independent authors. The book is on Smashwords, I believe, and in July he was running a promotion where it was free. I got it for free. I think that's over about now, but I think it's still like $3.99 or something. So, if you're interested in this kind of thing, sci-fi, post-apocalyptic, I would really encourage you go on Smashwords, support an independent author, pay $3.99 for for this book by a fellow author. You know, it's less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, that kind of thing. Most of us can afford $3.99, so just I encourage you, support your fellow authors, and if you can't support them financially, you can always do things like leave a review, promote them in videos like I'm doing now. Well, whatever it is, just promote them to your audience. But yeah, fellow authors, you know, need to support each other. I'm on the journey myself, and I hope when it's my turn that my author friends will support me and help me out. So help a brother out there. But yeah, Survivors of Mutant Dawn. I read it. I normally only have time for one fiction book a month ish because I'm trying to balance a lot of priorities, and I don't have as much time to read as I used to. But some you know, I was on my long trip last month, my work trip overseas, and I had time to read in the airplane. So and I had nights without Wi-Fi in remote areas. So having a book downloaded on the computer on Kindle was helpful. So really interesting book. It is post-apocalyptic. So there's actually I'm trying to remember what Richard told me in our interview. It is part of a series. I think it's the first one that takes place, although maybe not the first one he wrote. Um, and so there is. So I'll go ahead and tell you it's not a complete story. Like the ending isn't. It kind of is cliffhanger and such. I know he's written two so far, I think, and I think he has a third one coming out if I recall. But this one, I think it's the first one chronologically, and it starts in a semi-familiar world. Like it's still in the future. It's like 2155 or something like that. And the U.S. government is sheltering down after an attack. So there's already he's built this whole complex world, and I'm trying to remember all the pieces of it. There's already mutants, which are like people who have been exposed to either to radiation or to some kind of scientific altering. And some of them have like animal properties because or like animal DNA or something because they've been mutated. And there's robots also that are like that are being controlled by enemy forces and being sent after them. Um, in the opening of the book, there's a bomb goes off, and a radioactive bomb, and the U.S. government members have to shelter in place. So some of the main characters are the president, but also there's a spy agent guy named Marty, and then there's two brothers. One's the Secretary of State. His name is Bert Isabella, and his brother Michael Isabella is a scientist. And those three or four kind of become, I think, the main protagonists. I would say, and they shelter and hunker down in place in a bunker, and it's like it's kind of, well, how long, do we have to, can we outlast the radiation? And of course they found out the radiation won't be safe for hundreds of years. So then they begin to experiment. Is there anything we can do about that? Any way we can, cheat death here? And what kind of ends up happening is, Michael, the science guy, is able to preserve people who want it in robotic bodies, so they are able to survive potentially hundreds of years. This is a minor spoiler, but it happens pretty early on. Marty, the spy agent guy, his body is actually destroyed, but they preserve his brain in a robotic body because that's the thing you can do in sci-fi. So I mean, those premises. I mean, we've all read stories and seen, speculative movies and books and stuff like that. One thing that was interesting to me is pretty early on it became clear to me that the protagonists, the good guys, quote unquote, are not unequivocally good guys. I mean, they weren't completely evil, I don't think, but well, for one thing, they're acting for their own survival and their own nation's survival. But Bert, the Secretary of State, is definitely conspiring. Like he's working on things without the president's knowledge. He's going behind the president's back and stuff. And so is Michael. It's like they set up kind of this conflict between the science guys and the military, which often happens in stories like these. I feel like different branches having different interests, and Michael is kind of is when they capture some of the military people who, again, I mean, the military people aren't completely good either. They're dealing with flawed human characters, but when they capture some of them, he has a few qualms about using them for his experiments, and even basically putting their brains in robots without their consent, or things like that. So I'm like, okay, this is interesting. They're definitely conspiring to something, and there's a conflict coming, and it's building to a head, and of course without any structure. I mean, yes, the president's still there, but I mean, he has no country. There's only relatively few survivors. Who's going to follow him, kind of thing. And that there is a military uprising and kind of the breakdown of the structure we know, and what do people do, even high up people like that who are once in control. What do they do when they're thrown into this situation? So that part of it was really interesting to me, just the premise of seeing these survivors and how they act, and whether or not their actions can be considered good or heroic, just thinking to those things. It was a pretty interesting story. I will say that's only about half the book, and about maybe midway or a little over midway, I was surprised. I didn't realize this was going to happen. It does a time jump, because again, they're there for hundreds of years, and at least some of the characters are able to survive because they've been preserved in robotic bodies. I won't tell you who survives and who doesn't, but the ones who do survive eventually come out, so like 900 years later, and see the new landscape of the world, and of what was once America. And there's conflict then with other survivors, or I guess someone adapted to the radiation. And it's like stayed out in there, and the ones who they encounter are also mutants, and those who have been affected by radiation and stuff. So so they open onto that world, and it goes on for a little bit, but then again, it does not end conclusively. I believe his second book is called Mutated Lands. It's about these characters once they're in the mutated lands of 1,000 years or whatever in the future. So yeah, really interesting stuff. I mean, if you're a sci-fi fan, these are not brand new concepts, but we've heard them before. But I mean, every author does something unique with them, and I think having character at the center of it is what makes it interesting. So I mean, like I said, Bert and Michael and Marty, I think they're all interesting characters. I mean, I liked them, and to be honest, I'll give some minor criticisms. I mean, I still enjoyed it. I could tell it wasn't like the most polished book it could have been. There were some typos. There was some awkward dialogue. I mean, I found typos even in traditionally published books. So I mean, that's not too surprising. I mean, honestly, I wasn't sure going in. I was like, will this be an interesting story, or is it just, is it one of those that someone wrote that kind of just they published on their own? But no, I actually did enjoy the story. I tried to turn off my editor brain, tried not to be too critical. And when I focused on the characters and the world they were in, I did enjoy the story. So despite some minor flaws, minor criticisms, I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the characters. I think you will too. if you're into that kind of thing, sci-fi, post-apocalyptic mutants and robots and all that stuff. Check it out, Survivors of the Mutant Dawn by Richard P. Stone. Again, support your fellow independent authors because you want them to support you too, and we're all trying to succeed here. So go check it out on Smashwords or wherever you can find it. That's all for today. Keep writing, reading, and doing all that stuff you're doing. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.